A big welcome to our masterclass on software architecture in the age of AI. My name is Philip Perrin, and I'm delighted to have you join us today. We're honored to have Dr. Jasmin Jahić, researcher at the Department of Computer Science and Director of Studies in Computer Science at Queen's College, University of Cambridge, leading this session. Here's what we aim to achieve today. First, we will look to gain a deeper understanding of generative AI and LLMs in practice. Second, we'll be able to engage in a live discussion with Dr. Jahić. Third, learn about professional training opportunities with the University of Cambridge online. And finally, outline next steps following today's session. As mentioned, today we are joined by Dr. Jasmin Jahić and Stuart Utley. Jasmin is a researcher at the Department of Computer Science and Director of Studies in Computer Science at Queen's College, the University of Cambridge. And Stuart is a learning designer at Cambridge Advance Online and the lead designer of some of our most popular courses in software and artificial intelligence taught by Dr. Jahić. And my name is Philip Perrin. I'm an enrollment advisor with Cambridge Advance Online. Without any further delay, I'll now hand over to Dr. Jahić.
Hello, thank you for the introduction. I would just like to add on the introduction that my main research area currently is the application of artificial intelligence and generative artificial intelligence in software architecture and software engineering. Right.
Fantastic. So, Dr. Jasmin, thank you so much for joining us today. Really interesting time in industry in terms of how we're seeing generative AI developing across the whole of the software development lifecycle, but specifically with software architecture. So we'll be kind of looking today really at what's happening in industry, what are some of the case studies coming out of industry, and what does that actually mean for implementing software or generative AI within software architecture. So really great to have you in today's discussion. Just for a note as well, for those watching from wherever you are in the world, if you have any questions, as Jasmin and I have this conversation, feel free to add your questions in there. We'll come back to those at the end of the session, but it'd be great if you have any kind of follow-up questions from our discussion to pop those in. So the discussion today we'll be looking at is what industry needs are there from academic research. So the first question we have, Dr. Jasmin, is obviously we're hearing about generative AI being used in applications in pretty much every industry, but why is it specifically relevant for software architecture and architects?
Right. So let us try to summarize really from high level what are the challenges that architects face today. And in first place, it's really the scale of the system. The systems are getting bigger and bigger, so it's really hard to manage big software projects, even when there is available documentation and so on. So it's hard to understand their structure. It's hard to make adequate decisions, and especially it's hard to predict what are going to be the consequences of those decisions. In the other place, it's really the ever-changing context. So we have requirements which are coming up during the project. We have the changes in the execution environment of the project, and we also have changes in the available solutions. So there are new technologies coming up all over the place and constantly appearing there. So for an architect, it's really hard from one side to manage the complexity and the size and the scale of software projects. From the other side, it's really hard to manage the constantly changing requirements and available solutions that are out there in the technology world. So that's really the challenges from the architecture side. Now let's see what are really the benefits or the capabilities that artificial intelligence, or more precisely generative artificial intelligence, what does it offer? Well, it's really good, and we have seen that in several studies, in summarizing big data sets, and it's also really good in identifying very complex dependencies that for humans are very hard to identify. So in that regard, it can offer certain assistance or help to software architects. And on the other hand, it's really good also in identifying solutions in one domain and suggesting them in a different context. So if we take these two, we can see that there is a lot of overlap in challenges that architects face and in the solutions and capabilities that generative artificial intelligence is offering.
Great stuff. That's really, really interesting, really useful, Jasmin. The second question I'll go on to kind of follows up from that. You've mentioned the proposed applications or affordances of generative AI within software architecture. But how widely is it actually being used in industry? What are some of the industry reports and empirical reports coming back that look at how widely it's being used and how it's being used within industry?
Right. So GenAI in particular is in mainstream in the last 2 years, and we have seen an incredible development of using GenAI in software architecture and software engineering. There are many studies that share their results about using GenAI in software architecture, and I will just refer to a couple of them. For example, Tata Technologies, they have used GenAI to analyze natural language requirements and to identify quality relevant requirements and turn them into architectural drivers. So basically, they would take as input natural language, they would identify quality requirements, they would also generate some sort of the classification, justification why those requirements are really quality requirements. Whoever worked with the identification of the quality properties and quality requirements knows how hard this task can be. Then, for example, at Volvo, there was another study. They used the legacy system. They have a legacy system for their HR, and they realized, okay, this system is not really fulfilling all the needs that they currently have. So they used GenAI to analyze the architecture and suggest some architecture solutions. They did that on the architecture level and on the code level. There is also an interesting study from IBM, and this is really a common problem in software architecture, how to understand system from code. So they actually analyze code using GenAI. They also added some documents in the analysis, and they tried to reverse engineer, reconstruct the architecture from there. There is also an interesting study from Alibaba. They went on one level below on the application level. They analyzed the code and tried to identify code patterns which developers used. So you can say that for all of the major challenges that I have already mentioned in the first question, there are instances of solutions using GenAI.
Great stuff, and some really interesting insights and case studies there. Just to follow up on that, are we seeing an increase in the amount of generative AI uses within industry, or is it more so that we're also finding a wider uses, so more novel uses of it? I mean, how do those two things kind of compare in terms of how we're seeing it being used in practice?
Right. So I would say both. From one side, there is a strong push for companies to remain competitive, and they realize this technology can help them. So we see more and more companies considering how to adopt GenAI. But adopting GenAI for software architecture is not straightforward. And at this point, we really don't have the finite set of the cases where it makes sense. So what we see actually, the companies are finding new ways how to adopt GenAI for software architecture.
Excellent, which brings me quite nicely onto the next question, really. Obviously, we're at a very early stage in the exploration of how generative AI can be used within the software development lifecycle and generally, but also software architecture more specifically. Are we yet fully aware of the potential that it can bring to software architecture?
Definitely not. So what we see every day are some use cases, some new examples of how people in the industry are using GenAI. For some of these tasks, it's quite straightforward. So we see GenAI, for example, for use for visualization of the UML diagrams and so on. On the other hand, we see a lot of companies having sort of anxiety, how this will affect them, how the adoption of the GenAI will affect them and their organizations. And they are mostly concerned with long-term effect of GenAI. So in many companies, there is a sort of a fear that engineers or architects will start to over-rely on GenAI tools. And the consequence of that could be potential loss of the fundamental skills, potential loss of the knowledge of the system. And if you lose these two, then the question is, how do you operate in future?
And in terms of the challenges and tasks that you mentioned, Um, are we finding generative AI is particularly relevant for specific tasks or challenges? And are we getting a sense of like where generative AI can provide the most value within software architecture?
So it could be that this is the current limitation of the technology, but what we definitely see that for well-defined small problems, GenAI works quite well. So I have mentioned the example of using GenAI to visualize requirements using UML diagrams. We have studies that demonstrate how well it can work in this case. So if the problem is well-defined and it's small in scope of what GenAI should do, we can see that this is something that GenAI can do quite well. There are areas where GenAI still struggles, and one of them is if the problem itself is too big, then it's struggling to provide results which create benefits for the architects. But at the same time, there is a big problem of the lack of the context knowledge. So GenAI is usually trained on, or LLMs in this regard, they're trained on a lot of data which is available, but a lot of the data that is necessary to do a certain task within the organization, this is usually not available. So what we see for generic tasks, GenAI is great, but for something that is very context specific, for example, generate code using the code style which is used in certain organization. This is where GenAI struggles, and it's only natural to expect that because it doesn't have this knowledge.
Excellent. And you also kind of mentioned within that previously thinking about the longer term implications of using generative AI, specifically in terms of how it's going to impact the workforce and the role of a software architect. So, how do you see the role of software architects evolving over the next decade as these kind of systems evolve? And yeah, are we starting to see that in some of these case studies that are coming out?
Right. So you could say that there are two main reasons why architects themselves, why they go for the use of the GenAI. One is to make their work. One is to work in a more efficient manner, and another one is to produce the results which are of a higher quality. So previously, an architect would do a certain task, and they would do it with a certain quality. They realize with the GenAI they can produce higher quality results. Now, the key question here is how to maximize the benefits and how to minimize the drawbacks. So this is really the key question. What we see is that in general, experts, architects who use GenAI, they tend to be more productive, but there is a certain catch with this. Those who have a lot of experience, they are quite quick in terms of the processing of the generated results. So they can reason quite quickly if the GenAI results are useful for them, what is useful, what is not useful, what would work short term, what would work long term. So in that sense, what we see is from one side, there is a need for the closer collaboration between GenAI and humans. And on the other hand, there is a really need that architects who are using GenAI, they really have expert knowledge. So maybe to add on top of that, there was a certain concern when this whole trend started that the GenAI is just going to replace everyone. What we actually see is that GenAI is putting humans in the perspective and relying on the humans to acknowledge, filter, comment, or redo the results that it produces.
And so, just to follow up on that, with these kind of shifting roles that we see as generative AI is being adopted into methodologies and workflows, where could software architects look to if they want to understand, the types of skills that they need to be developing, or potential resources for upskilling? What are the kind of areas that they might be looking at for that?
So let's take a step back. Let's see how architects are really working with GenAI. And you could say that there are roughly two ways how they do this. One way is they just use chatbots, AI agents on their own, and they just use this raw technology to try to solve their problems. Another way is if someone creates tools, methodologies based on these chatbots, GenAI agents, so that this technology is in a way abstracted from the architects. Now, in the first case where they are using raw technology, they have to know a lot about fine-tuning of the models, configuration of the models, prompting, and so on. In the second part, they are more focusing on the evaluation of the results that those methodologies are providing. Now, the challenge with the second part is if you do not have architects or engineers who are directly using the raw technology, you have to have a team that is going to create the tools and the methodologies. So hence you have to have a dedicated team that is going to maintain this.
Excellent. That really kind of goes really nicely into the next question, which is, are there any particular architectural skills or mindsets that you think will become non-negotiable as these kind of technologies mature and influence the way that we create software?
I started to elaborate on this question previously, so I will just continue with that. So as I have said, what really became obvious is that this technology is putting humans in the perspective and their skills. So what definitely becomes non-negotiable are the architects who have expert skills, and which skills are the most relevant. Well, taking big problems, dividing them into smaller problems, taking the output of the GenAI, integrating those solutions. These are all highly valued skills that the architect should have. So the fundamental architecture skills, they're not going away. In fact, they're just becoming more and more important. It's just that now with GenAI, architects are able to do more and potentially do certain tasks and produce results that are of a higher quality. But in order to be able to do that, they really need to have strong architecturing skills.
Excellent. And it's been clear that we've had to kind of think about applying generative AI quite critically, keeping an eye on the short-term impacts, but obviously the long-term impacts as well. Are there any kind of key questions that remain around generative AI's ability to bring value to software architecture?
Right, so I would separate that into the two questions. So let's start with the first one. From the organization's perspective, organizations basically want to see how the adoption of the GenAI will bring them profit. And there is still ongoing work how to ensure that the adoption of the GenAI will bring them profit, because it's not straightforward. There are many hidden steps that only become obvious once people start adopting this technology. When it comes to the architects themselves, they are mostly questioning how this technology will be implemented in practice. So really, what are the necessary to do so they can really adopt this technology into practice? So I would say from that perspective, those are the main questions that appear. So the companies usually, like I said, need to create their own teams to deal with the methodologies and the tool chains that are enabled by GenAI. And they also need to do the restructuring of their teams, because the adoption of the GenAI also influences the way how the methodologies are organized.
Excellent. I think that all goes kind of leads really nicely to the last question, which is again, we've started to try and think about the longer term impacts, which we don't always have access to at this point. But how is our developing understanding of the longer term benefits and limitations shaping in light of the research that is coming through and the industry reports that we're having access to now?
I think this is one of the points where we really need to see tighter collaboration between industry and academia, because industry is mostly concerned with their own challenges, and rightfully so, where academia tends to ask some of these questions which are really long term. So I have mentioned that there is a potential challenge of losing the fundamental skills or over reliance on the AI. Let's see what does this mean actually even for companies in the longer term. If there are juniors at the moment and they're over relying on GenAI, then this might prevent them from developing certain skills. If they do not develop certain expert skills and if they're using GenAI, well, as we saw before, those who have really expert skills are really efficient with using GenAI. Those who do not have, well, they are basically gaining the less gain. So it's sort of a closed loop, which leads us to less efficiency, less benefit from using GenAI. So there is that challenge that juniors might need to consider this technology in a quite careful manner before using it, and also the companies, because they might lose the necessary skills in their team. Long term, there is one very interesting phenomena. We are relying on digital systems as part of our society. Now, if we end up in a situation, and I hope we will not, but if we end up in a situation where no one understands anymore digital systems which we use on a daily basis, supply chains, deliveries, not only the factories and the stuff, social media that we're used to, but really some of the systems, telecommunications, and so on, that we really rely to survive more or less in modern society. If no one understands those systems or partially understands, how can we maintain them? So I don't want to sound apocalyptic, but there is that aspect as well that we have to take into the account. But then again, this is something where the academia is taking a bigger role and trying to provide the answers.
Absolutely, and it's key, therefore, that both academia and industry can continue to collaborate so that we can provide these research and these findings and think about the longer term strategy of using generative AI, not only within a business, but the societal implications that has as well. Thank you so much. Those are all of the questions for the discussion. As I mentioned, if anyone watching does have a question that would like answering from Dr. Jasmin, please feel free to add it into the Q&A box. We've got loads of really great questions coming through. So feel free, if it's either related to directly what we were talking about in our discussion there, or you've got additional questions, please pop them in there and we'll be answering those shortly. Phil, I will be passing on to yourself to kind of introduce what we do at Cambridge Advanced Online and how that links to our conversation today.
Fantastic. Yeah, thank you very much, Stuart, and thank you, Jasmin, for that one. Yes, indeed. So before we dive into answering your questions, a quick note about Cambridge Advanced Online. So we are part of the University of Cambridge and offer high quality online programs for busy professionals. Our 6 to 8 week online courses include live sessions and are delivered 4 times a year, allowing participants to develop their skills and earn a University of Cambridge certificate. A little bit about who we are. So all of our courses, they are developed and led by Cambridge academics, with Jasmin here today being one of them. He actually leads 2 different courses. You'll have weekly live sessions with course academics, specialist tutor support, and access to a world-class learning platform. Plus, you'll earn a University of Cambridge online certificate and join a global community of learners from over 60 countries. In fact, also 98% of our learners rate their experience as good or excellent. As mentioned, on successful completion, you will earn a prestigious certificate awarded by the university. You'll also gain CPD points, receive a digital badge to share on LinkedIn, and be invited to join our exclusive alumni network. One of the things that makes the University of Cambridge Online unique is how we bring together different departments across the university to build each course. Rather than working only with one faculty, we draw from multiple disciplines to create learning that reflects real-world problem solving. This is just one example of the specialized topics we offer, including managing software architecture and generative AI in the software development lifecycle. In the QR code, you can access the full range of data and AI courses offered by Cambridge Advanced Online. And in the video that you can watch just now, you'll see a demo of the learning environment of the course Managing Software Architecture, one of our most popular courses.
Learning environments called Canvas. Canvas provides a clear platform to navigate and engage with content in order to create an effective learning experience. As you enter the learning management system, you'll be met with the home page for the course, with easily navigatable tiles for each of the course's modules. Each course starts with a Module 0 that is open to view a week before the course launch and gives you the opportunity to find out more about your course mates, the specific learning outcomes and content journey, and information about assessment, alongside more general information on navigating the LMS and where to get help. We can also view the modules via the module screen. Now let's dive in and show you what a module looks like. As you enter a module, you'll be introduced to the content and specific aims by a recorded introduction from Jasmin. Yasmin's presence is consistent throughout the course as he guides you through the content and appears in our live sessions where you have the opportunity to ask questions on the course content and the application to your area of interest. Discussion forums set up the theme for the module and give opportunity to reflect, share and comment on your peers' ideas, once again strengthening this notion of a cohort-based course. As you enter the main content, you'll experience a wide range of modes and methods to engage with the concepts of the course. These include animations and other video formats, formative interactive comprehension checks, stylistic curated graphics, and other engaging on-page elements that not only bring the course to life, but have been specifically designed to optimize how you navigate through the course content, ensuring the actual learning experience is both as intuitive and exploratory as possible. There are opportunities for reflection and application within your practice provided throughout the modules. Each module has a quiz for you to check your understanding of the core concepts, alongside assessments set up to capitalize on developing a collaborative environment where you learn and network with your peers through the sharing and peer review of module tasks. Canvas also allows you to populate your learner profile with images, bios, and social network links, enabling you to connect further with your fellow participants.
Fantastic. Well, I hope that was helpful just to get a little bit of insight into what the course looks like and how we've designed it around professionals and flexibility that's included there. If you would like to learn more or discuss enrollment for any of our courses, please do reach out. You can email me anytime on philip.perrin@cambridge.org, or please do visit the course page where you can request a call or enroll for one of our upcoming course dates. Now we will have time to answer some of your questions. I can see there are plenty of there. So I'm going to pass back over to Stuart and Yasmin, who will address the questions that have been put forward. But please do keep adding if you have any more.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Phil. So we've got loads of questions, which is fantastic to see. So many of you engaged with questions for Dr. Jasmin. I'll go through a few of these. We won't be able to, unfortunately, get through all of them today, but hopefully I'll kind of pick out enough of a bit of variety to represent sorts of things that you guys are interested in. So the first one we have, Dr. Jasmin, is a question regarding, I've found that GenAI excels in software architecture, especially in planning using multi-agent workflows. What are the issues that you have encountered? I would like to enhance my farm. So, Jasmin, any kind of insight into using multi-agent workflows and any issues that you've seen in this domain?
Sorry, I just started coughing. Yes, this is a really good question. What I have encountered so far are usually the challenges that are related to very complex logic. So, for example, if we have a sorry about this, if we have a logic that is specified in text, then GenAI is really struggling to understand this. For example, in the case of generating the UML diagrams, it really struggled to identify the diagram that should be referenced by other diagrams. So, for example, to generate a certain set of the diagrams, then as a human would recognize that some of them are similar or related, it would not be able to capture this. In the same way, for example, it would not be able to pick up certain logic that is quite complex or relatively complex, but obvious to humans. So this type of things is still struggling. It's still really a statistical tool that is trying to abstract or summarize the text. That's what we mostly see. There are technology itself limitations, and there are application of the technology limitations. Technology itself still has a lot of randomness. So in some cases, this can be a solution and a problem as well. In terms of the application, it's really that sometimes does not have the access to the contextual knowledge, and it's only able to provide the generic results. So retraining it, retuning it, or finding other ways to reuse the contextual knowledge, this is something that helps greatly.
Excellent. Thank you, Jasmin. We've got another one here, which says, Dr. Jahić, in your recent research, you mentioned that the productivity benefits of generative AI tend to decrease as project complexity grows. From an architectural standpoint, what specific guardrails or patterns do you suggest for maintaining long-term system quality when LLMs are heavily involved in the design process?
Right. So we did a lot of research actually how GenAI behaves as we start increasing the size of the problem. So what we have noticed is that as we start increasing size of the problem, it's only able to pick up on some aspects of the problem. So let's say it should analyze small portion of the code with concrete instructions, then it's really good. If we give it a lot of code, then it's only able to pick up and changes those aspects only on some of the aspects of the code or the design. So what seems to be a good approach is applying architectural knowledge, taking one big problem, dividing into the smaller problems, and then phrasing this using the prompts, and then integrating the solutions as outputs from those problems.
Excellent. Thank you, Jasmin. We've got another really interesting question here. So, what is the impact of LLM context size as a limitation for large project code bases? And are there any ideas for how that issue could be overcome?
Yes, that's one of the biggest technological challenges that we see currently. Some of the LLM models allow you to configure this. So what's going to be the context size for the technology reasons? So really how the neural networks and the transformers, so the technology below this is structured, there are limitations to that. So I will not go into that direction. I would like to more discuss, okay, how does this affect the type of the problems that you can solve? And because of the limited context window, there's only that much that GenAI can take into the account when trying to answer the question. So how does this manifest? If the problem is too big, they can only address aspects of it. But where this really becomes obvious is if you're trying to solve the problem using several prompts. So you constantly iterate and start to reuse or hope that the LLMs will reuse the previous results. After some time, you will see that it's actually losing the context. And this is quite tricky because then again, you're only getting generic results, generic advice. I'm pretty sure that in future, this will be improved. So this shouldn't be a hard stop in future. So when that happens, we'll be able to eliminate many of the issues with the lack of the contextual knowledge that we have now.
Excellent. And another question here, which is interesting in terms of now that we're entering this age of applying generative AI across the software development lifecycle, how are we defining quality when outputs vary by prompt context or data drift?
Right. So in terms of the software architecture, we always have to observe quality in a specific context. When it comes to the outputs that GenAI is producing, you could say that there are, I would not say the fully defined quality metrics, but there is already something that we can use. For example, there are matrices that define what does it mean to be complete, what does it mean to have a high recall, what are different matrices to use to quantify the quality of the code, to quantify the quality of the test, of the design, whether something is missing, what about the readability, interpretability. So we have a lot of that when it comes to the quality of the results themselves. Now, one step above that is what happens when we take the outputs from GenAI, we apply them in software project. How does that influence the quality of software products? Now, this is a quite interesting question. And again, we did a lot of research in this regard. And what we have observed that is if you have well-defined problems and you're integrating small solutions, especially in code, that doesn't have significantly bad negative effect on the quality. In many cases, it can enhance it because the code, especially itself, is of a quite good quality in terms of the performance, in terms of the readability, and so on. The challenges start when you want to address bigger problems, because it's simply not able to, I would say, comprehend the intentions from the humans and the level of the complexity from the whatever representation of software project we provide, whether those are the documents or the code. So it needs a lot of guidance, and even then you still need to do a lot of manual work. Otherwise, if you just adopt what GenAI generates, you might end up with compromising the quality of your software project.
Fantastic. I think we've got time for a couple more questions. Another question is, AI or generative AI usage may result in the slowdown of junior hiring, but it could enable more skill creation. Do you have any thoughts on this?
Can you repeat that question?
Yeah, so AI or generative AI usage may result in the slowdown of hiring juniors, but it could enable more skill creation. Do you have any ideas related to this?
Right. So maybe let's try to unpack that. When we say slowdown of the juniors, we did see certain trend, not everywhere, but it is certain companies that just said, "Oh, okay, my seniors can now do everything with GenAI. There are basically no tasks for the juniors anymore." But as I have previously mentioned, that if you do not give tasks to juniors, how are you going to create seniors? So you end up in this closed loop where eventually people leave, and you basically have no one to replace the existing seniors. So you're not creating seniors. So that's one of the big challenges, one of the big traps that you can fall into. Now, I definitely see that there is a great need for juniors to learn from the seniors. So I think it might save something, but not investing in juniors is probably not a good idea long term. Now, in terms of, are there going to be new skills or new type of works and tasks? Definitely. So what we see is that, as I mentioned before, one way to use GenAI is to really use the raw technology, but another one is to create methodologies for using that technology. So in a way, what we see, there is a need for in-house projects and products built on top of the GenAI that help the teams to use GenAI and those products to engineer software systems and architect software systems.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jasmin. And we also have quite a few questions specifically about the courses that we provide and the courses that we create. If I could bring in Phil to help answer some of these, that would be excellent as well. So we do have a question here just related to how can we join the programs that we provide in this area, and is there any information related to the costs of the courses as well?
Absolutely. Yeah. So all courses are on our website, and that's advanceonline at drcambridge.org. There will be a link, and we'll send out some further information after the webinar as well. All courses are listed there, along with dates for the rest of the year and individual course fees. They should be advertised depending on your geolocation in the local pricing. But yeah, please do visit the website or do contact me, and happy to share any more information over email to help explore further. So yeah.
Excellent. And another just a quick question on someone's just asking about the CPD accreditation that our courses have as well. So if you could talk a little bit, Phil, about what the CPD accreditation means in our courses and what that means as part of the certificate they would receive.
Absolutely. Yeah, I do get that question quite a lot. CPD are an organization who are based in the UK, so it is a little bit UK centric, but a little bit about it. CPD and CPD credits and points are something that professionals look to collect, usually to help support them with current membership bodies, with chartered membership, with other advancements in their career and recognition from a professional standpoint. They do translate internationally, but I'm aware from a lot of conversations with other global participants on courses that it's not always something that they're familiar with. So it's just an extra stamp on the quality of our courses and an extra professional stamp alongside the university's academic background and prestige that goes with it. But yeah.
Fantastic. We'll probably grab one more question, and this is for Dr. Jasmin to answer, related to the Managing Software Architecture course, and then Phil, I'll let you kind of close out the session with final remarks. So Jasmin, with the Managing Software Architecture course, does it focus on how to build systems that support the use of generative AI to create the software, or to use generative AI to assist in the architectural design and process itself, improving legacy software architecture, as an example?
Sorry, that's the course Managing Software Architecture, right?
Yeah, so this is specifically
Yes.
for managing software architecture. Does it focus more on how to build systems that support the use of generative AI, or is it using generative AI to assist in the architectural design process?
I'm afraid neither, because that course is purely about core competencies for software architects. We do mention software architecture in one. You do mention AI in one of the parts of that course, but that's mentioned in a way. Once you have the core competencies, now how can you complement them using AI and GenAI tools, methodologies, and so on? We have another course which deals with using GenAI in software development lifecycle, and that's exactly the name of the course, GenAI in the SDLC. And that's in that course we actually discuss using the tools for creating mostly non-AI systems. We do refer in one of the modules what's the difference between creating the AI-enabled systems versus non-AI systems, but the focus is on the using GenAI tools in software development lifecycle. So how to engineer systems, not necessarily AI, any of them.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that, Dr. Jasmin. It's a really, working on the course, it's really an exciting course that I think will help answer a lot of the questions related to best practices in applying generative AI in the software development lifecycle, as we are starting to really gain momentum in understanding, what this looks like in reality. Fantastic. So thank you so much for all of your questions. Really great to have this discussion with you, Dr. Jasmin. So thank you so much for joining us today. I'll pass over to Phil, who will close us out for the session.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you, Stuart. Thank you, Jasmin, as well. And thank you to everybody who has attended today. We do hope you have enjoyed this session and found it insightful and hopefully inspiring. As mentioned, please do reach out with any further questions or interest in the courses that we run. There will be a follow-up email with the recording of the webinar, so please do look out for that. And yeah, thank you all. Really appreciate your time.